Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Hegseth, Chairman Kane, thank you both for being here today. Mr. Secretary, your testimony over the last several days before Congress, I've heard you speak about all of your supposed accomplishments from your time at the Pentagon. I have to say, your training at Fox News has let you spin months of dangerous dysfunction and incompetence into catchy phrases like restoring the warrior ethos and increasing lethality. But the truth is, it's really been chaos at the Pentagon under your leadership. You've clearly shown you're unable to manage the Department of Defense, but what I'm most concerned about are three specific areas: your operational incompetence, your managerial incompetence, and your budgetary incompetence. So let's start with operational. According to news reports,
this wasn't a hearing. This was an intervention. A Democratic congresswoman just dismantled Trump's hand-picked defense secretary live on camera and exposed a level of incompetence so deep it might actually be dangerous. This man runs the Pentagon, and he couldn't answer a single basic question about Ukraine, China, spending, or even his own decisions. And you're about to see exactly why this moment matters for every soldier, every taxpayer, and every person who believes democracy deserves better than Fox News cosplay. Welcome back to True Liberty, where we cut through the noise and go straight to the rot underneath. And let me tell you, what we just witnessed was not a normal oversight hearing. It was a flashing red siren, a live demonstration of what happens when political loyalty gets promoted over competence.
According to news reports, in your first week on the job, you got confused in a National Security Council meeting and thought President Trump wanted you to stop all aid to Ukraine. In a well-functioning administration, you would have asked for clarification before making that seismic policy shift, but instead you ordered vital military aid heading to the front lines turned around, costing the U.S. millions of dollars and depriving Ukrainian soldiers of equipment they needed to fight Russia. So, Mr. Secretary, can you explain how exactly you misunderstood such a monumental presidential order?
One of many fake news headlines we've dealt with.
So, President Trump told you to halt military aid to Ukraine on January 30th?
As is often the case, highly ideological and very ill-informed reporters love to speculate about things they know nothing about in order to spear President Trump and myself.
So it sounds like actually the reporting is correct, because I will say, if it wasn't a mistake, why did aid restart only a few days later?
Again, we would take complete issue with what would some call reporting and others call a hatchet job.
So why did aid start just a couple days later?
I'm saying the reporting is inaccurate, ma'am.
I don't think that's correct. So let's move on to your managerial incompetence. I think we can see why you misunderstood the president, because you're obviously misunderstanding my questions. Less than a month into the job, you fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, C.Q. Brown, and the chief of naval operations, Lisa Franchetti, without cause. And to this day, you still have not provided an adequate explanation for removing them. As far as I can tell, you fired C.Q. Brown because he was black and Lisa Franchetti because she is a woman. So nearly 4 months later, we still don't have a new nominee for Chief of Naval Operations. News reports, and you can contest it, but I'd love to hear your answer, say that you haven't nominated someone because qualified admirals keep turning the position down. So tell me, Mr. Secretary.
You've got a defense secretary who built his brand on cable news smack talk, suddenly having to answer real questions, and collapsing under the weight of his own spin. He couldn't account for budgets. He couldn't explain firings. He couldn't even clarify whether he accidentally halted aid to a country fighting for its survival. Stay with me, because what happened here isn't just about one man. It's about what happens when an administration treats national security like a PR stunt and accountability like an optional extra. Soft beat. And hey, if conversations like this matter to you, stick around. You being here genuinely keeps this community alive. Because trust me, this gets worse. The more you look at the contradictions, the evasions, the bizarre half-answers, the more it becomes clear this guy is not running the Pentagon. He's surviving
down. So tell me, Mr. Secretary, when will Congress receive your nomination for the next chairman of the next chief of naval operations?
Ma'am, with all due respect, I would suggest not believing every headline you read.
With all due respect, I'd like your nomination. When will we see it?
There has not a single admiral or any military official has turned down a position that's been
So when will we see
provided.
your nominee for the chief of naval operations?
In due time, for all the right reasons.
Again, I think we've seen the managerial incompetence. Okay, let's move on to budgetary incompetence. You missed the deadline to submit a draft defense budget to Congress, which makes it impossible for us to complete our work on the NDAA or appropriations and makes it more likely you'll receive delays in funding you need for new acquisitions, programs, and other priorities. Additionally, you're blowing money on poorly conceived operations and vanity projects for President Trump. Retrofitting the Qatari jet to serve as Air Force One will cost about $400 million. The parade in D.C. this weekend will cost upwards of $40 million. Your bombing campaign in Yemen cost about $1 billion, and a week later they were having missile strikes in Israel. Your operations in L.A. will cost tens of millions of dollars, and you claim to be cutting costs at the Pentagon, but all I see are wasted dollars better spent addressing our most pressing threats like China. So, Mr. Secretary, what priorities have you cut funding for to pay for these projects?
Ma'am, I would just say your list left off securing the southern border.
So, Mr. Secretary, what priorities have you cut funding for to pay for these projects?
We make trade-offs every day, and I would imagine what we want to spend on is quite different than what the previous administration did.
Well, I think
Made
the American
those changes quickly, and they're reflected in this budget, and we're very proud of them.
I think the American people can see why I'm so concerned about this incompetence. Thank you, and I yield back.
Let's start with the Ukraine mess, because this alone should be a disqualifier. We have reporting, confirmed by multiple outlets, that in his first week, he misunderstood a presidential directive and halted critical military aid. His defense? Fake news. That's it. That's all he had. No timeline, no explanation, not even a coherent alternative scenario. He couldn't explain why the aid stopped. He couldn't explain why it resumed. He couldn't explain the millions wasted turning shipments around mid-route. This is the Pentagon, not a Facebook comment thread. And this is the conservative playbook. When confronted with facts, don't refute, delegitimize, attack the source, undermine truth itself. Create enough fog that people stop asking questions. Then we hit the firings. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the chief of naval operations, both removed without explanation. And when the congresswoman said what everyone was already thinking, that the pattern looks suspiciously like retaliation against a black leader and a female leader, he couldn't even muster a serious defense. Just vague dismissal, like he was swatting away crumbs on a table. This is what conservatives do. Pretend systemic bias can't exist, even when the evidence is staring them in the face. Then they accuse you of being divisive for pointing it out. He missed the legal deadline to submit the Pentagon budget. Legal requirement. And yet he talks constantly about every taxpayer dollar. You can't preach accountability while refusing basic transparency. And then the spending. $400 million to retrofit a vanity plane? $40 million for a parade? $1 billion on bombing Yemen with no lasting strategic effect? Tens of millions for domestic operations that make LA look like a movie set? Conservatives love to scream about inflation and runaway government spending. But when it's their spending, suddenly price tags don't matter. It's the oldest trick in the book. Austerity for social programs. Blank checks for militarized theatrics. Here's the truth. Mismanagement at the Pentagon doesn't just waste money. It endangers lives. It destabilizes global alliances. It exposes our military to political gamesmanship instead of actual strategy. And more importantly, it erodes democracy. Because when officials refuse to answer questions, refuse to provide budgets, refuse audits, they're not accountable to the people anymore. They're accountable only to the president who appointed them. That is not how a republic works. That is how strongmen operate. This moment isn't isolated. It's part of a long, dangerous pattern. Power being consolidated into fewer hands. Expertise being replaced by loyalty. Transparency being replaced by propaganda. Structural inequality being deepened by misallocation of resources. National security being used as a shield to avoid oversight conservative rhetoric. Sells fear, crime, immigrants, enemies abroad. But it never addresses root causes. It never confronts inequality or corporate capture of government, or the hollowing out of the middle class, or the way endless war drains resources from workers, schools, healthcare, infrastructure, and actual human needs. When leaders treat the Pentagon like a culture war stage, they aren't serving Americans. They're serving donors, defense contractors, and a political movement built on distraction and resentment. So yeah, this hearing mattered. It was a rare moment where the truth slipped through the cracks, that the people managing our military deserve scrutiny, and some of them are very bad at their jobs. We can't build a just, safe, democratic society if we can't even get straight answers about how our defense budget is being spent. Let me know what you think in the comments. I read as many as I can, and this community's insight always pushes these conversations forward.